Like this then.
Yep. So now we've got a couple of our Cambridge sort of researchers who are doing some really interesting work in relation to a new open. It's a new open access journal, isn't it?
Yes, it's very new. We only launched last May.
Yeah, yeah. So very exciting. So it's something that's new that Cambridge is doing, and really looking forward to. Well, apparently Dora's going to do most of the talking, but also Lisa Marie is here as well.
Yes. Well, thank you for the invitation. So I'm Dora Alexopoulou. I'm a researcher. I work on basically I'm a linguist. I do linguistics and language learning. Okay, I need to find. And I'm the editor of the Language Society and Policy, and I'll tell you in a minute what that is. And this is Lisa Maria Mueller, who is also a researcher at Cambridge with interest in language acquisition, and she's one of the managing editors of Language Society and Policy. So Language Society and Policy basically is an online open access journal that aims to publish policy papers that are based on research evidence. The whole idea is actually inspired by the history and policy, so I don't know if you're aware of it. I'm going to say a little bit of the history and how I came to set this up with colleagues. So around 2010, with colleagues in the Department of Linguistics, I set up the Cambridge Bilingualism Network, which was an engagement initiative of the university to go out to local schools and more widely to promote the benefits of bilingualism. So that was something that was coming out of our immediate research. And over the years, and as we started engaging with more and more people and networks, I started becoming a little bit frustrated about the ways in which some of our research was communicating, or the non-existing challenge for communication. So, you know, journalists would just pick up the phone and phone someone pretty much in random ways to ask about a topic, and this someone would give information. And I think, you know, while there was a very, you know, there's a lot of work on, a lot of information on language research out there in the media, and very good journalists doing a fantastic job, I just felt that was actually something that we should take, you know, we should be in charge of, and we should find a way that we actually collect, you know, research from around all universities, in fact, from around the world, and find, you know, a good way to communicate this, so that, you know, the journalists, the policymakers, yes, they can pick up phones and use their own connections, but there is also some place they know they can go to and start finding accessible information to them that is also that has some clear links to policy. And while I was having these frustrations, I went to a talk by Simon Strater, who had set up the Language in Policy. So I don't know if you're aware of this. It's basically, we are very much inspired by them. They're 15 years ahead. So we're trying to reproduce what they've done to communicate research and insights from research in languages and linguistics. So I'll just give you, I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of what, you know, this journal looks like. It was launched last May, so we only have our first collection, and we're still, you know, working on launching a number of parts of the policy. So, and it is also, yeah, I should say that in these first steps we are completely supported by MATES, a big HRC project, multilingualism, empowering individuals, transforming societies, which is directed by Professor Wendy Bennett, and involves a big collaboration of universities around UK. Now, I find I'll just need to go through. Okay, so basically LSP publishes high-quality peer-reviewed language research in accessible and non-technical language to promote policy engagement and provide expertise to policymakers, journalists, and stakeholders in education, health, business, and elsewhere. So I'll just take you a little bit about, sorry, the setup.
If you look at the screen, you can have
Yes, maybe that is. I need to put. No, I wanted to see the set. No, first perhaps the editorial team.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to start from the editorial team. Obviously, it's me and Lisa Maria and Daniel, managing editors, but we have set it up slightly different from LSP and obviously from the academic journals. So we have a set of associate editors who are all academics. And then in the editorial board, we have people from outside academia, okay, so stakeholders who have an interest, potential interest in the research, in the papers we want to publish. And the idea is here, in order to make this work accessible to the outside world, it's better to have input, from people that actually, care about this. They can help us, and we've had a good response, and that list actually is going to enlarge. I'll come back actually to this, but I'll just go to the policy papers. I mean, there are two essential points of content, and then there is the formatting. The big precondition is that whatever research you want to talk about, it needs to be published already. So we don't engage with the specialized peer reviewing. We take that for granted. So the research has to have been published. And then, the whole process is how you write that in an accessible way and also make a link to policy. And the link to policy can range from an evaluation, an implication your research may have on an existing policy, a potential evaluation of an existing policy in light of a research result, or even suggestions for new policies, which not always academics find easy to do. I'll go through the titles of our first collection just to give you an idea of the topics and the field. Maybe I should go. Yeah. So we have the Healthy Linguistic Diet, the Value of Linguistic Diversity and Language Learning Across Lifespan. So this is a paper by a neuroscientist and an educator discussing a number of a number of benefits bilingualism brings to individuals, and promoting this idea of introducing to schools this idea of a healthy linguistic diet, the idea that in the same way every day you have 5 portions of vegetables and fruit. You can encourage kids, especially kids from different communities, but also monolingual English speakers, to engage in a bit of language learning. And there is a lot of basic research on the benefits of bilingualism for delaying dementia and the cognitive effects. Can you? This one, I think, is Learning Foreign Languages in Primary Schools is Younger the Better by Florence Malch, she's a professor at Essex. It's, I think, a typical example of a paper where research can inform policy and make it, if you wish, more realistic and more effective. It picks up on the idea that is widespread and actually has informed policy. The younger you start learning a language, the better it is. And the paper basically tries to paint a more complex view on the basis of research and argue that, yes, there's a lot of evidence promoting this, but you need to put a lot of resources right at the beginning and basically a lot of hours of teaching, which is currently not the case in schools. I'll just go a little bit, multicultural London English and social and educational policies. This is about specific stigmatized dialects in London, and a lot of suggestions of how discussing about these languages and bringing them in the curriculum can help, in effect, cohesion, in social cohesion in London, a number of, and can be beneficial also to the individuals. Multilingual education for multilingual speakers. This by Anth Maria Tim, who is actually the chair of English and Applied Linguistics here in Cambridge in our department. And she really picks up some recent studies on the achievement of children with English as an additional language, and she's trying to explain, well, to, you know, clarify and explain why learning English may be difficult or challenging for those kids, but there is a complex picture behind their achievements. And then we have some policy reviews on language policy in the Wales and also language policy in Europe. And perhaps the final one, can global cities have a language policy, again from Manchester. So I think that gives you the flavor. So the papers are short, they have to be 2,000 to 3,000 words. You know, the format, actually that was one of the hardest parts of the first round, trying to get academics to write in a non-academic way for someone. So, you know, avoid references, avoid excessive citations, avoid jargon, be simple, and also sharpen the policy implications, which is not something we think about a lot all the time. And now we are about, shall we go to the kinds of papers? Yeah. Yes, but there's nothing really there yet. But we are about, in the next 2 weeks, we're launching the dialogues papers with the title, Language Policy in UK, and we have a collection of papers from politicians, and that is actually from politicians, stakeholders, and academics commenting on actually the non-existence of language policy in UK with a number of suggestions. So that is like a forum where we see more about dialogue on policy. So I think, this is really, I don't think one needs to explain why when you set up something like this has to be open access. I mean, trying to engage with politicians and convince them to, and policymakers, and convince them that they need to pay attention to evidence rather than their own ideas about things should be, is not going to happen if these papers are hidden behind a paywall. I mean, that is obvious. And I think it is an important way and a good way to make your research relevant in the wider society. I think it's also a personal call. You need, to want to do it. Right. Okay, and Lisa Maria now is going to tell you a little bit about why she got involved with this project.
Exactly. So I'm a postdoc on Strand 5 of the Multilingualism Empowering Individuals Transforming Societies project, and our whole project is very much policy focused. So our aim is to really do research that will indeed
I'm not sure if that's needed, but
that will indeed lead to some changes in how languages are taught, how they're perceived in society, how different dialects are perceived, to lead to social cohesion and so on. And the reason why I got interested in working as a managing editor for the LSP Journal is quite simple. My background is in foreign language teaching. This is what I did before and while I was doing my PhD. And a lot of my colleagues, I had the luxury of doing a PhD alongside, so I obviously still had access to all of the academic articles, and that wasn't a problem. So I could always rely on that university access. However, a lot of my colleagues who, during their studies to become teachers, were extremely motivated and very interested in academia and what academia has to say about language teaching and learning, suddenly were cut off this access to all of these articles. And on top of that, when they did have access, most of them ended with the sentence, "We need more research." So basically it was this amazing paper with clear findings, but the conclusion was, we don't know anything, we need more research. And that's not very useful. If that's fine if you're an academic. And clearly that's the case, we do need more research, but also if you're a teacher, if you're a practitioner, if you're a speech and language therapist, you want an article that will actually impact what you're doing on an everyday basis in your field. So on the one hand, we try to reach the politicians who will make decisions kind of top down, but on the other hand, we also wanted to reach the practitioners who will actually now be able to go and read an article on language policy, for example, in Europe, and how that impacts their work, or whether it makes sense to teach languages in primary school, and if we have to do it, how we're supposed to do it. So we're also aiming at the bottom-up approach, and this is what really motivates me. And so far the feedback from many practitioners I've spoken to was very, very positive, because also how we designed the papers is that not only are they short and easy to access, and obviously based on very high profile academic research, but on top of that we've also summarized them with bullet points at the beginning, so that if you don't have time to even read the 2,000 to 3,000 word article, you can just get a good idea of what the paper is about. So this is what's really motivating about it. Some of the challenging that are involved in working on this is that I as a postdoc am facing high-profile academics who are extremely good at what they're doing, extremely good at academic writing, and then I have to sit down and butcher their article and tell them to rewrite it all so that it is actually interesting and appealing for our audience. But so far that has actually worked really well and has been a very positive experience and a high, steep learning curve for everyone involved in the project, for the other managing editor as well, who is Daniel, and who is not based at this university. So in terms of that, it's as I said, a steep learning curve, and I'm definitely learning from the different types of articles. It was really interesting at the beginning to sit down and see what different types of articles we would have and how we could best, why they would be of interest. So we're going to have the policy papers, as Dora said, and dialogues, but also opinion articles, where we want to open up the stage to academics to voice their opinion in a more casual way on things that are going on. Obviously, we've got the possibility of being of a very quick turnover, and therefore being very much up to date and replying to recent policy changes, for example, and also the research lab papers where we would like academics to explain what their daily research life looks like and why it leads to the outcomes and to the results that can then be used in schools. So I think, for example, in schools or SLT practices, it is not just about language learning. So yeah, I think that's it really. I'd encourage anyone, if you get the possibility to work as a managing editor, for example, for a journal, I think it is an excellent learning opportunity. And it is, particularly working on this journal, it is particularly motivating to be working on something where the impact has the potential of being quite big. So yeah, I think that's pretty much 5 minutes for questions, I think. Yeah, is that yeah.
Are they always the core subject of the academic paper that they come from, or are they sometimes tangential?
No, they have to be so they have to be based on specific peer-reviewed research.
I'm not sure I understood the question. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Sorry, I'm thinking more in terms of myself being a medievalist. Would you consider a paper from a medievalist perspective that said that the actual core paper that's based off is this is how this makes sense in medieval context, and then your policy paper would be this is how this makes sense in modern context?
Yes, I think in principle that would be, so it's all about the links, and of course if you do something more historical, it's about bringing the relevance of something from the past to today, which I think, especially when it comes to multilingualism, it's really, we would love a paper actually that would bring something like this, because what people think is that everybody has always been monolingual, and that's the natural state of people. In fact, historically, it's not, I mean, it's very, multilingualism is very widespread around the world today, but historically it's been widespread even, in Britain and in Europe, that for the last few decades people have this idea of national, you have the national language, national and state equation. And but I think it is important that, there is this backup of, there is a backup of core research already published, because we cannot engage with reviewing that. Okay, then we would be another type of journal. We'd have to become too specialist.
I have a quick question. I'm interested to know, are you tracking whether the material that's being, I know it's still quite new, that's being published in the journal, like where it's hitting in terms of policy? Can you do? Is there a causal arrow?
Not yet.
Not yet. Yes.
Yet. So for the moment, because we are part of this project, and we're working together with a lot of the policy fellows. So the project as is has a number of other policy dimensions, and we're doing workshops, and so we are part of the process, and we're working. It's one activity among many others, but we haven't stopped and taken stock for the moment on this particular, also because it's very early days. My hand is also from talking to people from the Policy Research Initiative, and also from the experience with LSP, is I think something like this is really to gather the research that can potentially have an impact on policy and open up the debate and engage, raise the awareness of the issue. So we just don't leave it to the newspapers, we just get the newspapers also to talk to us about how they present it. So it's more about, I think, raising awareness of the issues, promoting certain messages, and also raising all the issues around policy, rather than impacting the policies per se. I think possibly for that you need something, you really need to go with very specific proposals to very specific people, and just, but having said all that, the dialogues, one of the questions we have in the dialogues we belong to, which is with the UK language policy, is about this actual issue: how do you change policy? And that's why we have tried to get politicians involved. Hopefully I have answered. Yes.